and welcome to Exeter Laira. Thanks again for joining me on this 2018 Christmas special, question and answers. Really blown away by the amount of questions that I've received through the part one of this video, and really looking forward to answering a lot of the questions that came through. This is obviously going to be a little bit something different, face to camera basically, first time ever on all of my videos that you've seen me in front of the camera. So really looking forward to getting on with the questions. What I've done is I've listed up a fair few questions. I haven't got them all down as it will take up your Christmas day and I don't want to sit here for hours on end answering several questions, so I've gone through, just picked up some of the best ones anyway. So I'm not going to hang around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the video rolling, so if anything goes wrong then it'll all be on camera, hopefully not. So get started with the questions. First one I've got was from Barnabas Junction by Jason. What is your most hated part of your layout to date? If I was to say anything, it would have to be just as it goes through the back scene on the south end of the station. There's a very tight S-bend in that area, which doesn't necessarily cause any running issues, but it, I've tried to avoid installing S-bends when I design the layout, but unfortunately because of the chimney breast being in the way, I kind of had to negotiate the track around it, so I'm going to change it. Just because it's there at the back of my mind, it bugs me. Strathpeffer Junction. What sort of model railway videos tickle your fancy the most? Good question. Like weathering stuff, obviously. Running sessions are okay if you get a really good sort of down to track level with the camera and you've got some interesting stuff going around it. Technical stuff is okay. I think if you need sort of like that extra bit of advice, do like layout updates, but I do find that a lot of people kind of just quickly pan around their layouts and you don't really get a full insight of what they've done during that particular update. So mini-series, do like those. I think if anything actually the top of the list probably has to be mini-series and stuff like that. New Junction. Hi Richard. Sleeper spacing, was it worth it? Yeah, absolutely. If I suppose giving people advice in things like sleeper spacing, you know, you see a lot of really good layouts out there who go really full on with all their scenics, and they'll stop at the track. They'll simply get it out of the box and put it down on the layout. I think it kind of comes across as a lot of people are so used to just seeing HO scale track that we all just think that's the norm, and what's the point of modifying it? That's okay. I always think HO scale track just looks out of place when you run a loco next to it. It just looks out of scale. I think when you start getting used to the respace sleeper stuff, you then look back at the HO scale stuff and then that all looks rather odd. It's just a shame that Pico don't release more points other than the new ball head stuff with the correct sleeper spacing, really. I like it anyway. Who knows, you may do it one day and all. End trains by Paul. If you could start from scratch, what would you do? If I was to start from scratch, I'd probably use the second choice of layout that I was going to build instead of this one, which was an area close to where I used to live. Just on the outskirts of my town, there's a place called Worthing Junction, and it was part of the Waterloo to southwest of England route, basically, where you kind of have the junction that would diverge around to Exeter or down to sort of Bournemouth, Weymouth, and it had 4 running main lines and partly electrified as well, so that adds a kind of whole different scope to just moving away from diesel, so you have the diesel and the electrics as well. John Warner, what controller do you use and would you recommend it? Currently this is running on Hornby Select and it's fine for now anyway. If I was to recommend it, I think it's ideal for beginners or someone who just wants something simple and basic. Touched upon by John Carville, do you like the controller you use and would you change it? If so, what for? It's okay, as I say. I do plan to change it in the future to Gauge Master Prodigy Express. Valley Brook, if there's any changes from the start of your layout plans, what would they be? Probably the loop behind me that goes up to Exeter Central. That originally was going to actually be positioned just in an open loft space just to the right, which is about another 7 foot of sort of open area, and I wanted to put the loop in there. It was on the plans, but I never did it for some reason. The plan is to move it in the future, and I will. It'll add an extra, good area for running 2 or more trains on that single loop. Galgorm Hall. If you can only have 3 products to assist you in producing your weathered stock, what would they be? Weathering powders, brushes, varnishes. Yeah, that's enough. That'll keep you going. Penny Hill Junction. Will you finish your fiddle yard before I finish mine? At the rate you're going, Jamie, no. I haven't started mine yet. I don't plan to start making that adjustment till springtime next year. Ashley Griffiths, what brought you to modelling the late British Rail period and Network South East in particular? My era, I grew up around that era, hold plenty of memories on the railways basically in that era and that time. Jeff over at Jumble Lane, I know your layout is based upon the Exeter and Laira area, but will you be featuring a train scrapyard area or sidings in any way to show off your weathered locos? This area here, funnily enough, is actually going to be just for that. I sort of looked at lots of images of how the Class 50s looked in their withdrawal state, and a lot of them were actually stored in sidings next to Laira, so it kind of fitted with the area, the regions, and obviously the time period as well. Duffield Junction, what are the scenic plans for the layout, if you have any, and if not, what things would you like to add? Scenic plans for the layout is to try and keep it as close, obviously, to the regions that I'm doing. I think really kind of like the scope in the landscape is the biggest thing. That's obviously why I've chose to use the open frame, because it gives you the ability to become really creative and not have a flat surface to model from. Obviously I'm going to be doing a lot of scratch building. I've got to try and keep as much of the buildings as close as I can, without going down the lines of buying kits and things off of the shelf. That's about it really. Stuart Taylor, when do I start the massive task of scenery? Just on the other side of the layout, station side, that's well underway. While I'm on this side, it's all under wraps, and that will hopefully go up sometime in January, the first stages of that. St Michael's Hill, what part of modelling railways do you find most challenging and which comes most easily to you? I think the most challenging parts have to be trying to suss out how modules and that type of stuff work. Obviously there's a lot of kind of specialist stuff out there to really get your DCC layout really advanced, and a lot of it I haven't touched upon it, and I'm not really computer minded, so I don't understand a lot of it. I think the most easiest part, probably weathering, comes easy to me. Sandridge Junction, what was the hardest part of your layout that stressed me out the most? All this, basically. Super elevation on this side really tested me to the limits, because I put it down first time and was never happy with the fact that when your trains were coming out of the elevations, the actual transitions through all the coaches all over the place. They wobble too much as they come out, so that was torn up and done again to a different style. Once that was done, the actual track deck itself needed quite a lot of adjustment to get it so it was completely smooth all the way up, and because obviously it runs on an incline, it was quite a challenge. It took a long time to get it right. Exeter Central, do you prefer kit building or scratch building? Over there at the moment I am actually scratch building, and I have done kit building in the past, and I must admit I don't really enjoy kit building, simply because you're going off of a set of instructions and it's repetitive, tedious work. I do find scratch building's more sort of hands-on, and it's your own creation really, and I'm enjoying that more than I was kit building, so definitely scratch building. Mr. Deltic, would you ever do an engaged layout? If you'd have asked me that probably about a year ago, I would have said no, but obviously since seeing some of the new engage stuff and how well detailed it is, I wouldn't rule it out. I'm quite impressed by, you know, how much it's come along in the last few years in terms of detail, so who knows, next one may well be engage, we shall see. New Durham Junction, how long did it take you to research the details for your layout and the measurements for your track spacing? Track spacing I did simply by just what I thought looked right. There are plenty of things out there that tells you what spacing between it's supposed to be. It's just a case of what I thought looked good, is how I worked that out. In terms of how long it took me to design this, 3 years in the planning I think it was, with so many changes. This whole Laira section never existed first of all in the first set of plans that came around, because I wanted to incorporate the scrap theme. So it took a while to get what I wanted, and for it all to fit into the loft as well. Steve Smith. When Jamie at Pennyhill does his 1970s/80s Newton Abbot layout, will I still be talking to him? I think he's beginning to get the ump over us, trying to push him into you know, a decent era, not known as modern stuff. But who knows? One day you might think, let's do an early period. We'll see anyway. Cheers, Steve. Strathpeffer Spa. Why the scrap line? Where has all your inspiration for your weathering come from? God, good question. I think what took the inspiration towards it was, I suppose during my teenage days I kind of moved away from trains because they just weren't cool. Wasn't the in thing to be sort of watching, was it? I suppose when you're growing up as a teenager. As I started a family, we sort of ventured out and looked at more preserved railways, and I remember seeing a Class 50 in preservation, and it just kind of drew me in. I thought, wow, look at that, you know, I haven't seen one of those for years. That then led on to lots of research and finding out basically what happened to them. Then you obviously get the Google images of all the ones that were withdrawn, scrapped, and it was from that point onwards I wanted to replicate that sort of image onto models. So I took up basically the weathering, and I always had the envision of wanting to create 50040 as an exact replica of what it looked like, because it was the last 50 that was scrapped in 2008, and I did it. Practiced on tons of models, eventually got all the techniques that I wanted, and produced 50040, pretty much detail perfect. So I think that initially kind of touches on where it all come from. Dave Webster, how did you get into model railways? Probably my dad. When I was a little lad, he always had a model railway, and I used to enjoy sort of laying down next to it, watching the trains go around. And also my nan quite often took me and my sister on several day trips when we were kids, all by train travel, so it's always been there. Jason and Alan Isherwood, how long has it taken you to reach this point with the layout? just over a year, I think about 14 months I think. Haven't been on this as often as I'd like to have been, but so progress has been slow. Rob Witcher, I'm building or attempting to build my own layout still and would like to know, is a set track plan best as a beginner or to go straight in from an own design layout? I suppose it all comes down to what you feel you're comfortable in doing, really. I personally don't like set track plans, they look too out the box. Also as well, if you design something for yourself, then you've got your own personal kind of layout basically. Hunts Heath, is there a model that nobody has released yet that you would really like? If so, what is it and who would you like to make it? Class 442. No one's ever released that as a model. Quite surprising enough, it's been around since 1988 I think they were first introduced, and they covered the out of Waterloo down to Bournemouth, Weymouth, southwest of England route, an EMU, and they were technically nicknamed pigs because the front end of them looked like a pig. If you don't know what they are, Google them. I'd like to see that made. In terms of manufacturer who to make it, I'd like to see someone who's new out there on the market producing models now, rather than the likes of Bachmann who take forever to release things. And I think if that ever come out, that would really push me to want to create another layout after this one, from that idea of the other choice in my layout. That's touched upon by Al Nahadi Central. Same similar question. Rolling stock, I'd like to see more Mark II coaches in different formations. Bought out, be nice. Robin Price, how did I get the rust effect on the peak? You've not been watching my videos, Rob? If you go back to my videos, you'll find my series, back to the start of it all series, features many weathering techniques. You'll find a how-to video in there of how that was done anyway. Wearside Rail, what modern loco would you like to run on your layout? I'm not a fan of modern. I think if anything it would probably have to be the 66, simply because it's still about, so it's still classed as a modern loco, though it's getting on a bit. It's probably one of my favourites that are out there at the moment. Ledgers Farm Junction, do you use an airbrush sometimes or even own one? I own one. I don't really use it much for weathering. Find it's too much of a uniform finish. It's handy for if you're doing loads of rolling stock and you just want a quick spray over. Simple, really. Simon over at Liverton Central. Did I ever tell you how excellent you are at weathering, to include the weathering you did for me? Yeah. Cheers, Simon. Mark Hudson, what keeps you motivated to strive for excellence? I think one of the biggest things I like is pushing myself. If I produce something, I'll look at it and think that's good, but I can still improve on it. So with that in mind, I kind of keep on pushing myself to get better and better at whatever I do. You know, a lot of people see my models and think, you know, you've done a really good job of that. I look at it and think it's okay. So I'm probably my own worst enemy really when it comes to perfection. I'll always seek to look for something looking better than what I've already done. That keeps me motivated. Where are we? Mark Dukes, what powders did you use on the 45? All Humbrol. Just mix them up a bit. The Southern 207 Hobbies, what's your favourite diesel locomotive? One of those. Class 50. David Jones, whose channel did you enjoy watching within the Model Rail network? That's touched upon by Amory Junction as well. Obviously we could all turn around and say the usual suspects that we all watch, Everard, Dean Park. I've got to admit, what I find that attracts me to a channel is someone who starts from the scratch, from the beginning basically, and they come up with a really well put together opening video, and it draws you in, and then that continues throughout their sort of YouTube time. There are a couple of examples of that. Jamie Pennyhill and James at Tony Docks followed both of those from the start, and you're following their journey. But there's plenty of other videos that I enjoy watching, yourself included. Ewan Perridge, what weathering job am I most proud of? Touched upon that again. 50040. I don't no longer own it, but it's one of my favourites. Tony Carrington, what's the one item you haven't got yet that you're dreaming of either running or adding to the layout in the future? That has to be probably the Swallow HST. I think it's on the top of my list, and was my favourite train when I was a kid, so that's definitely going to make an appearance pretty soon. Sandwell Junction and Hadley Moor. How long does it typically take to weather a loco? Standard basic weathering, even including scrap weathering, normally a couple of hours. This one took me about 4 hours because there was a lot more different effects on it that I created. So 2 to 4 hours. Colin Busby, what camera and editing software do you use? Samsung phone, and the software is just basically I think it's video editor and movie maker, I think, are the two apps that I use. Newlands Corner Railway, how many bad weathering efforts did it take you to get so good? Probably, I would easily say about 50. The first 4 that I did were really bad, and I think after that I kind of slowly worked new techniques, but I had the ability to kind of wipe it off and start again. So kept on, and funnily enough, actually a lot of the techniques were actually done by making mistakes. So there was a few. Stockton Junction, why did you choose the area and era of the layout? What's the inspiration behind it? Era, obviously I grew up in that. The areas were because St David's Station was, my nan took us out on day trips when we were kids, and St David's Station was the first station that we ever got to on our route to down Torquay, Paynton areas. And I always was really excited as a kid to get down there because it was just a mix bag of locos and rolling stock, etc. that was down there. And obviously the 125 was my biggest train that I liked. So I it just holds memories on that. The scrapline side of it came around because obviously what I do weathering wise, I wanted to incorporate something on the layout that would have had the scrapline theme to it. And I say doing the research kind of then led me to Laira, because that's where the 50s were withdrawn, and a lot of them were stored until their preservation or their scrapping. Stevenage Junction, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start out in model railways? I think the first thing's got to be your budget, really. What you've got to put into the layout all comes down to what size really that you've got to build it, because there's no point in building a whopping great layout if you haven't got the money to invest into it to build things up. I mean, this is slow because I haven't had probably one of the best financial years, so I'm limited on what I can do, and it reflects really. So if year after year was like this, then this layout would never get built. It would take too long, and just keep it your own really. It's as simple as that. James DEMU, have you ever considered doing a super detailed job on the model before putting it into scrap condition? Yep, done it plenty of times. Cut bits and pieces off the bodywork, like the grills, or even down to the length of putting little replica power units inside them. It all makes part of a diorama. Didn't do it on this one in particular. Too much time. Warwick Road, if money was no object, what would you buy or do to the layout? I think the biggest thing first would be to stock up on all my rolling stock. I think another thing I'd like to do is to actually employ someone bring them in and get them to wire it all up with a really state-of-the-art DCC system with lots of modules and bits and bobs on it, and connect it all to a computer system and teach me to use it. That would be nice. If I win the lottery anyway, let's see how it goes. Mary Hampton Productions, how did you first come up with the weathering techniques that I use? Practice was the first thing, obviously watching other people's videos and then getting the ideas from them and just making them my own. But a fair few of them are actually found by doing mistakes, basically. As an example, one of my techniques that I commonly use is basically the take-off effect. So you cover the loco in whatever tones and colours you want, then you wipe most of it away. And that was found by chance because I got so fed up with one model that I'd made such a mess of it. I sat back and thought, I've got to clean that off. So I got out the rag and wiped it clean, sat back, looked at it, I thought that looks good. And then just worked on it just to try and improve it. Joe Walker, do you weather all of your rolling stock or just some and leave some as new? Tend to like to weather all of it, really. I think, you know, you're trying to create an image of what would have been something that was in the real world, and you know, when things were travelling along rails, nothing was really clean unless it was fresh out of the factory, or even, you know, through the loco washes, they still come out slightly dirty. I've obviously got Glorious that runs around, which is been stripped of weathering, and as a retake on obviously not the newest model that they've got, but even that hasn't come straight out of the box and gone on the layout. It's had a gloss finish done to it just to try and create it, the illusion that it's actually a real train, basically, or real loco. Robert Temple, how did you discover the peeling paint technique? Another one by chance, actually. Was actually trying to create the illusion of rust coming through paintwork, and I was scratching the surface as you're meant to do, which draws the actual weathering powders out, and it actually caught and peeled the actual surface of paint that I put on it. And so I scrapped the first idea and then just carried on doing the paint peel effect, and just even now I'm still trying to get used to doing it and trying to find different ways of making it look even better from, you know, how it's done already. So another one that was just discovered by chance, really. But that's my questions anyway, so apologies if I haven't mentioned all of them, as it's Christmas Day for you guys, not quite for me, but I didn't want to take up your time, so I'm going to get straight on with the prize draws, and I'm going to start with the Engage one. There was 5 people that entered into that in the end, and got your numbers in the box, so I'm going to just pick out a couple of numbers, pick out a number and see what we got. So for the Engage coach will be number 10, which actually is John Warner. So thank you very much. Well done, John. And for all the 00 gauge ones, you're all in here. And going to start with the building first of all. So get a number out of there without looking. And we've got, that one is number 47. And now for the lorry and the locomotive itself. Having a look through, we've got this one, which is number 5. So there we go. So anyway, thank you very much for all your questions, as I've said. Well done to the winners of these. To claim the prizes, if you can just pop down into the video description, you'll find ways of contacting myself, so I'll get these out to you, which will be probably in the new year sometime now. Be sad to see the lorry go, actually, quite like that. But on this note, I'm going to wrap up the video and say thank you to everybody. Really thoroughly enjoyed, actually. It's kind of different to do piece to camera, and take this opportunity to wish you all a happy Christmas and a really good New Year as well, and happy modelling for 2019. I've got lots planned for the layout. Obviously scenic stuff's all beginning over there now, and so there's going to be huge progress on this over the next year, so stay tuned. And for now, I'll raise my glass to all of you and say cheers, happy Christmas.